This talk describes the Young Stand Monitoring Program, the collection of forest health data, and preliminary results to estimate future volume impacts caused by stem rusts across a management unit. The Forest Analysis and Inventory Branch, or FAIB, includes about 10 full-time staff that manage the ground sampling program, coordinate and audit field measurements done by certified contractors, and compile and analyze data. Over 700 ground samples are measured annually across 5 different ground sampling programs, including the Young Stand Monitoring Program. FAIB implemented a provincial young stand monitoring program in 2011 to monitor the change of young stands across the province. The sampling framework, forest attributes, and estimates of change are based on traditional concepts in forest inventory. These include ground samples established on a systematic grid to provide statistically sound, point in time and change estimates of forest attributes. These monitoring data also support other uses to test the accuracy of spatial map coverages, track forest health, and test management assumptions in TSR. Over the past 9 years, FAIB completed YSM program establishment across a majority of interior TSAs. The first 5-year remeasurements have also just been completed on some units. Current and planned priorities are to expand YSM coverage to include coastal and northern TSAs. The YSM population is defined by the VRI Phase 1 spatial layer and includes all stands between 15 and 50 years old in the Crown Forested Land Base. The 5 by 10 kilometer sampling grid is an intensification of the National Forest Inventory grid. Ground samples are established at every grid point that intersects with the YSM population. At each remeasurement cycle, stands previously too young are also established with new plots. This sampling framework is simple and repeatable and helps ensure the program can be maintained over the long term. The establishment of ground samples follows documented standards. In addition, forest health training is offered most years by regional forest health specialists to contractors awarded field sampling contracts. Each YSM ground sample is established as a nested circular plot where trees at least 4 centimeters in dBH are permanently tagged and remeasured. Every tree is stem mapped and measured for diameter, height, and is assessed for forest health damage agents and severity. Sample trees are selected to obtain site index estimates for all major species. Finally, a subset of measured ground samples undergo independent audits to ensure quality measurement standards are met. This illustrates an example of an established YSM ground sample plot, the stem map trees located in the plot, and the 4 documented photos taken at time of measurement in the 4 cardinal directions from plot center. Forest health damage agents and severity are assessed on all tagged trees based on the provincial list of pest species codes managed by Resources Practices Branch. Up to 5 damage agents are recorded for each tree and are recorded in descending order of severity for multiple occurrences. This also includes previously tagged trees, which subsequently become dead fallen at time of remeasurement. Special consideration is given for stem rusts, where additional measurements include the height from the ground and percent circumference measured for each stem rust on the tree. These added measurements feed directly into the task growth and yield model, which also includes the GRIM and CRIME forest health modules. The YSM program in the Lakes TSA helps illustrate the design and methods used to quantify rust impacts across a management unit. In 2017, 32 YSM ground samples were established on a 5 kilometer by 10 kilometer grid network across the young stand population. Parks and protected areas located in the southern portion of the TSA were excluded from the YSM population. From the collected forest health data, the incidence of all forest health damage agents are summarized for each ground sample as a percentage of the total number of trees affected. This figure illustrates the incidence of the 3 stem rusts of interest within each YSM sample. These include Commandra blister rust, DSC, Western gall rust, DSG, and Stalactiform blister rust, DSS. Out of a total 32 YSM sample plots established in the Lakes TSA, 26 plots had some level of rust presence. When averaged across all YSM samples in the Lakes TSA, the measured stem rust incidence, shown as blue dots in the chart, is 2% for DSC, 12% for DSG, and 1% for DSS, for a combined 15% stem rust incidence. The 95% confidence intervals around the average percent is also shown in red bars. Ideally, every YSM ground sample would be remeasured up to a desired rotation age. Then the true impact of forest health pests would be known. The YSM program is only just completing a first 5-year remeasurement cycle. So as an interim step, TAS is used to project the growth of each YSM tree list to rotation. In cases such as these, where additional stem rust data are also collected, including the gall heights and percent encirclement, TAS projections together with the GRIM, and CRIME forest health modules can be used to estimate the future volume impacts of stem rusts based on measured YSM data. Further detail is provided here for an example YSM plot in the Lakes TSA. This plot was 27 years old at time of measurement, comprising 100% pine with a density of 1,400 stems per hectare. DSG was recorded on this plot at 23% measured incidence. Looking at the gall height chart, galls were measured up to 5 meters in height, with most galls between 1 to 2 meters in height. Looking at the gall encirclement chart, the majority of galls were at 30% encirclement or less. The nested stem mapped YSM plot was then used as input to run TAS. TAS runs indicate that when projected to age 80, there is a 2% merchantable volume impact due to stem rusts. This percent is expressed as a percent volume loss relative to a non-infected stand. This entire process was repeated for each YSM ground sample plot. Each YSM ground sample is projected in TAS from its current age to estimate future volume impacts from stem rusts. Across all 32 YSM samples, the impact ranged from 0 to 8% volume loss when projected to a rotation age of 80 years. The average volume impact for young stands in the Lakes TSA is projected to be just under 2% by age 80. The same process described for the Lakes TSA has been repeated for other management units with ongoing YSM programs. This table summarizes preliminary results across 7 TSAs, including YSM sample size, average current age of the sample population, current measured incidence, and estimated volume impacts at 80 years. Some points should be considered when evaluating these results. The stem rust incidence is based on the current stand age. In the case of the Lakes TSA, the average age is 31 years. So while growth loss before the first recorded measurement is unknown, the current measured stand does reflect past losses that have already occurred. Overall rust impact depends on the proportion of host species. In the Lakes TSA, 60% of the overall species composition is pine, with 40% attributed to other species. All YSM samples in the population are included in the analyses, whether rust is present or not. In the case of the Lakes TSA, 81% of the YSM samples had some recorded rust, while 19% had 0 incidents. Future impacts are dependent on model projections. To help minimize these risks and provide the growth model with as much measured information as possible, additional tree detail are collected from all ground samples. These include measuring the stem mapped locations of every tree, 100% height tree measurements, and detailed stem rust severity measurements. Over time, modeling risks will be reduced as YSM samples continue to be remeasured on a regular cycle. All ground sample plot data, including YSM, maintained by FABE on public lands have recently been designated as open data under the BC Open Government License. These compiled plot data are available to the public either from the BC Data Catalog or through a GIS web app that allows users to spatially review and export data from custom areas of interest. All YSM forest health data that have been collected are currently being summarized by species, forest health damage agent, and severity for each YSM plot and averaged across each TSA management unit. The intent is to provide a snapshot of all forest health information recorded from YSM data. This workbook is currently still in development.